Men still enter an active volcano every single day to mine a material the modern world barely needs anymore. The real reason why will change how this job is understood forever. High above the island of Java in Indonesia, inside the walls of an active volcano, one of the most dangerous manual labor jobs on Earth is still operating in plain sight. This is not ancient history. This is not a forgotten tradition. This is happening right now. Workers descend into toxic craters filled with poisonous gas, extreme heat, and unstable ground to mine sulfur, a substance the global economy already produces in safer, cleaner, and cheaper ways elsewhere. And yet, this job continues. This video breaks down how sulfur mining inside Ijen volcano actually works, why it still exists in the modern world, what makes it so dangerous, and how economics, industry, and tourism quietly keep one of the world's harshest jobs alive. Sulfur mining at Ijen volcano exists at the intersection of geology, chemistry, economics, and human labor. And to understand why this job is considered one of the most extreme on Earth, the environment itself has to be understood first. Ijen volcano is an active stratovolcano in East Java, Indonesia. At its summit sits a massive crater nearly 1,000 feet deep, holding one of the largest highly acidic crater lakes in the world. The lake contains extremely high concentrations of sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid, making it lethal to humans and wildlife. The surrounding environment is unstable, unpredictable, and constantly releasing volcanic gases. The volcano continuously emits sulfur-rich gas from deep underground. As pressure builds inside the Earth, these gases escape through cracks in the rock, often at temperatures exceeding several hundred degrees Fahrenheit. The gases are invisible at first, but when they reach cooler air, they react, both chemically and physically, forming thick clouds and liquid condensation. This natural process is the foundation of sulfur mining at Ijen. Unlike modern sulfur production, which relies on industrial refining, sulfur mining here depends entirely on capturing volcanic gas. Large metal pipes are inserted into gas vents near the crater lake. These pipes act as artificial channels, guiding the gas away from open air and allowing it to cool as it travels outward. As the superheated sulfur gas moves through the pipes and encounters lower temperatures, it condenses into liquid sulfur. The liquid drips from the ends of the pipes and begins to solidify as it cools further. Over time, the sulfur hardens into bright yellow solid blocks, creating the raw material miners extract by hand. The yellow color of solid sulfur gives rise to its nickname, Devil's Gold. That name reflects both its appearance and the brutal conditions required to obtain it. The environment where this mining takes place is immediately hostile to the human body. Temperatures inside the crater frequently rise above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, intensified by geothermal heat and minimal airflow. The air is heavy, humid, and saturated with toxic fumes. Prolonged exposure can damage lungs, eyes, skin, and internal organs. The most dangerous hazard, however, is the gas itself. Two main types of sulfur-related gases dominate the crater environment. The first is sulfur dioxide, which is released from deep inside the volcano and channeled through pipes. Sulfur dioxide irritates the eyes, throat, and lungs and can cause long-term respiratory damage. Prolonged exposure increases the risk of chronic breathing problems and reduced lung function. The second gas is hydrogen sulfide, which emerges from beneath the acidic lake. This gas is significantly more dangerous. At low concentrations, it smells like rotten eggs. At higher concentrations, it paralyzes the sense of smell, removing the body's natural warning system. At very high levels, hydrogen sulfide can cause sudden loss of consciousness and death within minutes. The presence of hydrogen sulfide makes the mining process highly unpredictable. When large clouds of thin white smoke rise from the lake, it signals a dangerous buildup of gas. In these moments, miners must evacuate immediately. Delaying even briefly can result in severe injury or fatal exposure. Despite these risks, sulfur mining continues daily. The structure of labor at Ijen plays a major role in why working conditions remain so extreme. The mining operation is licensed to a private company, PT Candy and Grimby, which controls access to the site, owns the gas pipes, and operates the weighing stations and processing facilities. However, the miners themselves are not formal employees. They are classified as independent contractors. This classification means the company does not provide safety equipment, health insurance, or long-term medical support. Miners are responsible for purchasing their own protective gear, including gas masks, gloves, and appropriate footwear. In practice, many miners cannot afford professional-grade protective equipment. As a result, improvised protection is common. Cloth masks, towels, and handkerchiefs, sometimes dampened with water, are often used to reduce direct contact with sulfur dust and fumes. These methods offer minimal protection against toxic gases, and they do little to prevent long-term health damage. Once sulfur solidifies at the pipe outlets, miners begin the extraction process manually. Using metal bars and crowbars, they chip large chunks of hardened sulfur from the collection areas. The sulfur is then broken into manageable blocks and loaded into baskets. The physical labor required at this stage is intense. Sulfur blocks are dense and heavy. Individual loads often exceed 150 pounds, with some loads reaching close to 200 pounds. These loads are carried on bamboo poles balanced across the shoulders, with baskets hanging on either side. After loading, miners must carry the sulfur up the steep walls of the crater. The path is narrow, uneven, and slippery in places due to sulfur dust and volcanic residue. There are no safety rails, no mechanical lifts, and no vehicles inside the crater. The ascent out of the crater is one of the most physically demanding aspects of the job. The incline is steep, the air is thin and toxic, and visibility can be reduced by smoke. Carrying loads heavier than body weight places enormous strain on the spine, joints, and muscles, increasing the risk of chronic injury. Once miners reach the crater rim, the job is only partially complete. From the rim, sulfur must still be transported several miles to weighing stations. This part of the journey is often done using simple carts or trolleys along uneven mountain paths. Each load is weighed, recorded, and paid based on the total weight delivered. Payment is calculated by kilogram. The average rate is approximately 9 cents per kilogram. On a good day, completing multiple trips can result in earnings between 12 and 17 US dollars. In the local economy, this wage is higher than many alternatives, including farming or casual labor, which is why the job continues to attract workers despite its dangers. From the weighing stations, sulfur is transported to nearby processing facilities. These facilities are owned and operated by the same company that controls the mining license. At the factory, sulfur undergoes further refinement. The sulfur is heated and boiled to remove impurities such as dirt, sand, and rock fragments. It is then filtered multiple times to improve consistency. After filtration, the molten sulfur is poured onto large surfaces and allowed to cool and solidify again. Once hardened, it is broken into smaller pieces or granules and packed into sacks for transport. The primary destination for this sulfur is nearby sugar factories. Sulfur is processed into sulfuric acid, one of the most widely used industrial chemicals in the world. Sulfuric acid plays a critical role in sugar refining, where it helps bleach raw sugar crystals, giving refined sugar its white appearance. It is also used in the production of fertilizers, detergents, paper, rubber products, batteries, and many other industrial materials. Despite its wide range of uses, sulfur mined from volcanoes like Ijen represents a very small fraction of the global supply. Approximately 98% of the world's sulfur comes from oil and gas refining. During the refining process, sulfur is removed from fossil fuels to meet environmental regulations. This sulfur is highly pure, consistent, and produced at massive scale. The sulfur industry tied to oil and gas is valued at nearly $13 billion globally and continues to grow. Compared to refinery sulfur, volcanic sulfur is less pure. It may contain acidic residues or particulate contamination. For many large-scale industrial applications, this lower purity makes volcanic sulfur less desirable. So, why does Ijen sulfur mining still exist? The answer lies in cost, location, and demand. For the company operating at Ijen, sourcing sulfur locally is cheaper than importing refined sulfur. Transportation costs are lower, infrastructure already exists, and labor costs are minimal. Even with lower purity, the sulfur meets the needs of nearby industries, particularly sugar production. There is also a second, Less obvious factor sustaining the mine: tourism. Ijen volcano is a major tourist attraction. At night, sulfur gas ignites as it escapes the vents, producing vivid blue flames that glow in the dark. During the day, visitors hike to the crater to see the acidic lake and to watch sulfur mining in action. Tourism generates revenue for the region, and it indirectly supports the mining operation by keeping access roads open, funding security, and maintaining basic infrastructure. Visitors often see miners working in hazardous conditions while the visitors wear full protective gear, a stark contrast between observation and participation. In recent years, some workers have diversified into tourism-related roles, such as guiding visitors or selling sulfur-based souvenirs. However, the majority of sulfur extraction continues through manual labor inside the crater. The COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacted sulfur mining operations at Ijen. To reduce crowding, miners were split into shifts, and daily production fell from approximately 25 tons to around 10 tons per day. The loss of output cut earnings, while the physical dangers remained unchanged. Health risks associated with sulfur mining are well documented. Chronic exposure to sulfur dioxide can cause long-term respiratory disease, reduced lung capacity, and persistent coughing. Skin contact with sulfur can lead to rashes, burns, and blistering. Repeated heavy lifting increases the likelihood of spinal damage, joint deterioration, and muscle injuries. Life expectancy among sulfur miners is significantly lower than average. Many workers experience declining health well before old age, often suffering from breathing difficulties and chronic pain. Despite these realities, the job persists. There is no simple replacement for sulfur mining at Ijen because the factors sustaining it are deeply interconnected. Economic necessity, limited local employment opportunities, industrial demand, and tourism all reinforce the system. Shutting down the mine without alternatives would remove one of the region's highest-paying jobs. At the same time, the global sulfur market has little incentive to intervene. Volcanic sulfur represents a tiny share of supply and does not impact global pricing or production. As a result, sulfur mining at Ijen continues in a strange state of isolation, visible to tourists, documented by media, yet largely untouched by modern labor reforms. It exists not because it is efficient, but because it fits neatly into the gaps left by global industry. Sulfur mining at Ijen volcano is a stark reminder that even in a world dominated by automation and industrial efficiency, some of the most essential materials are still obtained through raw human labor in extreme environments. The job survives not because it is necessary on a global scale, but because it remains economically viable in one specific place. As long as demand, tourism, and limited alternatives intersect at Ijen, the volcano will continue producing devil's gold, and the risks will remain buried inside its crater. Watch the next video on screen to uncover another extreme job the modern world depends on but rarely questions.